When Emma Watson, one of Hollywood's elegant and self-aware faces, stepped into the View studio, she expected nothing more than a simple interview. But within minutes, no one could have predicted that day would go down in American television history. Emma had arrived to promote her new social project and her role in her latest film. However, the atmosphere she encountered felt more like a trap than a conversation. If you've ever witnessed celebrity interviews that struggled, prepare to see something different this time. This wasn't just a clash of ideas, it was a confrontation where values, histories, and respect were questioned live on air. The studio lights came on, the cameras rolled. The audience applauded. Emma Watson stepped onto the stage. Her calm, graceful steps were graceful, and her light gray pantsuit and simple demeanor reflected her genuine elegance. Her smile was gentle, but the tension in the air was unmistakable. She shook hands with her co-hosts, warmly greeted Whoopi Goldberg and Sunny Hostin, and then her gaze fell on Joy Behar. Joy's smile held something sharper, as if she had already mastered her words before they were spoken. "Welcome back to The View, Emma," Joy said, leaning slightly into the microphone, a sly twinkle in her eye. "Joining us today is Emma Watson, actress, activist, UN Women Goodwill Ambassador, and who also stars in her latest film." The brief pause at the latest film part didn't escape her attentive ears. Emma nodded with a smile, her voice gentle. "Thank you, Joy. It's always nice to be here." Joy tilted her head slightly, the corners of her lips curling ironically. "Oh, I'm sure you do," Joy Behar said, her voice laced with a touch of sarcasm. "Emma, you've had quite a variety of work throughout your career. Do you consider yourself a successful actress?" The audience laughed nervously. There was something hidden beneath the question. Emma paused for a moment but responded without blinking. "I've been lucky," she said softly but firmly. "I've worked hard, and I'm proud of the projects I've been involved in." Joy suddenly laughed, a loud, condescending laugh. "The hard work, or playing the same intellectual, truth-seeking character in every movie? Because let's be honest, if you've seen one Emma Watson character, it's like you've seen them all." The air in the room suddenly turned cold. Emma clasped her hands together and turned her gaze to Joy. Her smile was polite but cautious. "Perhaps there's a limitation in your perspective," she said gently. "Every character has layers, if you really look." Joy responded quickly. "I'm a careful observer. I just didn't see any depth. I mean, your characters are either a student searching for themselves, a rebellious activist, or the ideal version of yourself anyway. Do you really think that's acting?" Whoopi shifted slightly in her chair. "Joy?" she started to say, but Joy silenced her with a hand. Emma straightened her body a little, looking Joy directly in the eyes. "If you think so, that's your opinion," she said sincerely. "But I think the millions of people who watch my films and find something in them will disagree." Joy pursed her lips and raised two fingers in the air sarcastically. "Ah yes, that famous, everyone finds a piece of themselves in Emma Watson. But how does this everyone connect with someone who also owns homes in London, is the face of luxury fashion brands, and wears clothes worth thousands of pounds? How real is that?" Emma took a small breath, her face still calm, but something was beginning to burn in her eyes. "Joy, I've never forgotten where I came from. I don't think there's any contradiction between being successful and staying true to your roots." Joy's smile suddenly vanished. Her tone became harsher. "Oh, come on," Joy Behar said, a sharp edge creeping into her voice. "You're in it just as much as the rest of Hollywood. You make millions playing people who are suffering, but there are people out there who are actually struggling. You can't speak for them, Emma. You left that world behind years ago." The air in the hall suddenly thickened. The applause died down. A few audience members gasped. Emma took a deep breath. Her shoulders were straight, but her voice was calm. She was careful to choose her words. "That's a pretty serious assumption, Joy," she said, her eyes fixed. "You don't know me. You don't know where I come from, or why I'm still struggling." Joy leaned back, crossing her arms over her chest. "Maybe I don't," she said condescendingly. "But I know what I see. Before me is someone who has cashed in on the struggles of her past and now forgotten them." Emma's lips pressed together slightly. Her hands were clasped under the table, but there was not a trace of anger on her face. You seem to have a lot to say about me, Joy, she said softly. But what you're saying sounds more like yourself than me. A faint ooh rose from the audience. Joy's face flushed for a moment. Anger flashed in her eyes, but her face remained confident. Trust me, Emma, we'll get to me, she said, her voice hardening. But we're talking about you right now, and I'm not finished yet. Emma leaned back in her chair. She looked at Joy without narrowing her eyes. Me too, she said in a simple but pointed tone. Now everyone in the studio could feel it. The stage was set, the boundaries drawn. The next few minutes wouldn't just be an argument, but a clash of two different worldviews. When the signal for a commercial break came, the stage was thick with tension. When the cameras rolled back, Emma sat calmly, her hands on the table. Her expression was slightly strained, but her voice remained soft. Joy Behar was leaning forward now, a defiant glint in her eyes, a smile almost curling in amusement on her lips. Whoopi and fellow host Sunny sat silently in their seats. Their gazes flickered between Emma and Joy, as if they were caught between two storm clouds. Joy wasted no time. Now, Emma, she said, her voice almost sweet, but with a subtle venom at the tip of her words. Is this new project of yours a young woman trying to save the world once again? Or are you someone with the same ideals, but with a different hairstyle this time? A nervous laugh rose from the audience. Emma smiled slightly, but this time her eyes narrowed. That's a very creative interpretation, Joy, she said with a gentle sarcasm. But if you hadn't just read the press release, you would have seen that this film is, at its core, a story about a person confronting themselves, trying to repair what they've broken in the past. Joy clapped her hands exaggeratedly. Ah, a redemption story. How fitting. After all, hasn't your entire career been spent trying to make up for what you did before Hollywood embraced you? The words cracked through the air like a whip. The studio held its breath for a moment. Emma's back straightened slightly, but her voice remained calm. If you want to talk about my past, let's talk. I've made mistakes, and I've taken responsibility for most of them. I've worked hard to steer my life in a more meaningful direction. Joy jumped in, a hint of sarcastic ambition in her voice. Take responsibility or sweep them under the rug and smile for the cameras. As far as I'm concerned, you're still the same Emma, just in a more expensive dress. Emma's lips pressed slightly together. Her eyes were steady, her voice gentle but distinct. You really enjoy judging people, don't you, Joy? Joy leaned back, crossing her arms over her chest. I just enjoy exposing hypocrisy. You present yourself as the voice of the people, but at the end of the day, you're just like any other millionaire actor. You're just better marketed. Uneasy murmurs broke out in the audience. Emma paused for a moment. Her fingers twiddled on the armrest of her chair. Then he turned his gaze to Joy and spoke in a calm yet moving tone. You don't know what I do when the cameras are off, Joy. You don't know who I talk to, where I go, whose stories I listen to. So it's easy to tell people I'm just pretending. But what you call easy is a lifelong burden for some. And you certainly don't know what I value, Emma said, her eyes locked on Joy's, her voice still calm. Joy retorted immediately. Her voice had risen now, the old Brooklyn edge resurfacing. Oh, but I know, she said, her voice sharpening even more. You care about the box office. You care about your image. You care about your name being in the news. By repeating the same messages over and over again because you're afraid to take a real risk. Emma tilted her head slightly, forming something akin to a smile, but there was no humor in it. You know, Joy, the funny thing is this, she said softly. You talk about kindness, equality, progress every day here. But when someone doesn't fit your narrative or doesn't think like you brutally insult them. The words hung in the air. Whoopi raised her eyebrows slightly. The audience seemed to have barely caught their breath, but Joy didn't back down. Insult? She leaned forward. If I'm dealing with a fraud, then yes, because to me, you're a fraud, Emma. Everything is fake. Your image, your projects, and that perfect girl facade you put on for the cameras. Emma spoke without taking her eyes off Joy. Fake? She said, her voice solid as a wall. I've tried to be genuine my whole life, at the cost of being misunderstood, at the cost of being alone. And if I'm sitting here today, It's because I still believe I can change things. Joy slammed her hand down on the table. Oh, please. Have you worked your whole life? For what? Acting on film sets? In a world where people suffer real pain, you're considered a struggle because you cry on stage? You're a Hollywood construct, Emma, that's all. A restless hum rippled through the audience. Emma's hands were clasped on the table. Her knuckles were tense, but her voice remained controlled. Say whatever you want about me, Joy, she said, her voice gentle but her tone clear. But don't disrespect the people who marched with me, the silent millions who supported me. Because those people you despise say they found their own voice when they heard my voice. Joy's laughter was harsh and condescending. Oh, don't think so highly of yourself. No one supports you. People just love the idea of Emma Watson, because it's easier to believe in a polished, imaginary figure like you than to face the real world. The tension in the studio was palpable. Even the camera could be felt shaking as it zoomed in on Emma Watson. The muscles in her jaw were slightly tense, her eyes dark. She leaned forward, measuring every word. You have a lot of ideas about me, Joy. But the thing is, you don't really want to hear the truth. You just want to win. Joy retorted, leaning forward. Oh, Emma, you don't understand. I've already won. That confident grin on her face was the final blow, sparking the spark. Emma leaned back slowly. A heavy silence fell. She took a deep breath, her eyes fixed on Joy. It was as if she were speaking even with her eyes. Whoopi shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her voice barely a whisper. Maybe we should get to the movie now. But neither Emma nor Joy blinked. Joy turned her head with a sweet smile, her eyes still burning like fire. Oh no, we're just getting started, she said softly. A faint smile, both bewildered and harsh, crossed Emma's lips. You're right, she said quietly. We're really starting. The audience was silent. It was as if the entire studio had held its breath. The audience, seated shoulder to shoulder, turned their heads left and right, their eyes fixed on both sides, like spectators in a boxing ring. Emma adjusted her wristband slightly. The gesture was almost ceremonial. She placed her hands back on the table. Her expression remained calm, but a sense of determination sparked in her eyes. Finally, she broke the silence. You really enjoy this, don't you? She said. Her voice was still soft, but the edge in her tone was palpable. Putting people in corners, trying to make them look weak, makes you feel strong, doesn't it? Joy raised an eyebrow, her smile deepened. Enjoying it? I'm just asking the questions no one else dares to ask, that's all. Emma tilted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing. No, she said. She leaned forward slowly. You care about the spectacle, not the truth. You love watching people get hurt because it makes you worth watching, but it doesn't make you worth respecting. You delight in insulting, Emma said, her tone calm but cutting. You're not interested in the truth. All you care about is applause, making yourself look smart by making people look bad. Mutters rose in the audience, some in agreement, others shifting uneasily. The studio was now boiling like a volcano. Joy pursed her lips and waved her hand dismissively. Please, Emma, don't play that hurt idealist role with me. You're an actress. You're good at that, but you don't scare me. Emma leaned back slowly, her eyes narrowing as she replied. Good, she said quietly, because you don't impress me either. The sentence sent shockwaves through the air. Joy's nostrils flared, and her smile faltered with a momentary wave of tension. Do you know what your problem is? Joy asked, straightening up in her chair. You've been told you're amazing for so long that you're now believing it yourself. Emma tilted her head slightly. A faint smile tugged at her lips. And what's wrong with you? She asked softly. You've been talking down to others for so long that you've forgotten what you're even standing up for. The words cut through the air. Joy's face froze for a moment. Her eyes narrowed, but a second's pause passed before she answered. Then she narrowed her eyes and lunged forward. Sweet words, she said sarcastically. But here's the truth. Let's look at what you truly represent. Mediocre movies, forgettable characters, and someone who's built a career on beauty and an accent. A surprise ooh echoed from the audience. Whoopi involuntarily closed her eyes and turned her head to the side. Emma's jaw tightened slightly, but she remained seated. Her tone was clear. Those are words you could easily say from your own seat. But out there, daring to speak for the silent, inspiring children who can't even dream. That's not acting, Joy. It's taking a stand. Joy laughed wryly. For what? In a world where real people struggle, you're just dreaming. Real heroism doesn't come from acting, Emma. People like me fight. People like you just wear costumes. Emma shook her head, calm but determined. You think fighting means fighting everyone. The sentence hit like a slap in the face. The room erupted in applause. First a few, then more. Emma still hadn't moved. Her eyes held a serenity, but also a deep vulnerability. War was fought with words, but her weapon was subtlety. The audience erupted in applause. Some stood up, cheering Emma on enthusiastically, but Joy didn't even move. She leaned closer, her voice hoarse but venomous. Really? Did you think you'd score with us that little speech? Please, your entire career is just a polished Oxford drama performance. It's not real. It's just a dream glossed over with Hollywood gloss. Something flashed in Emma's eyes. It might have been the first crack in her composure. But she didn't shout. She slowly placed her hands on the table, palms flat. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes locked on Joy's. You can say whatever you want about me, she said quietly but sharply. But you can't disrespect those who have dreamed the same dreams, faced the same impossible odds, and searched for their own voices. Because you don't know who they are. Joy grinned. The feeling of superiority was still on her face. Oh, what are you going to do, Emma? She said sarcastically. Are you going to call me out? Are you going to show off your power? Maybe unleash a Shakespearean tirade like you used to? Emma exhaled briefly through her nose. She closed her eyes for a moment and nodded. That's the difference between you and me, Joy, she said. You think power is making the loudest noise or striking the first blow. But true power is maintaining your dignity even when someone tries to drag you down. The words hit the studio hard. Even the camera seemed to hold its breath for a moment. A chilling silence fell in the studio. Joy's lips curled into a cruel smile. Ah, Emma, you've already lost your dignity. You just don't have the humility to realize it. At those words, the entire studio seemed to freeze. The audience didn't move in their chairs, and even the host seemed to stop breathing. The studio lights felt brighter than usual. The air was so thick that even words could barely pass through it. But Emma was still at the table. He wasn't bent. He wasn't broken. A silent fire burned in his eyes now, and this silence was stronger than the screams. Emma slowly straightened her tieless collar. Her face was as if carved from marble, calm, expressionless. But her eyes held a spark of suppressed anger, disappointment, and pride. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was low but clear. You know what, Joy? You're not worth it. Joy's smile twitched for a moment. Then she pulled herself together and asked sharply, What's that? Are you running away now? Typical. But Emma just shook her head. She rose slowly from her chair. The sound of her chair scraping the floor in the seated crowd was the only thing that interrupted the studio. No, she said bluntly. I'm just leaving with all my self-respect. A stunned silence erupted in the audience, followed by scattered applause. Some audience members stood, while others watched in silence. But everyone couldn't take their eyes off her. Joy crossed her arms across her chest. Her face was filled with that confident air. But there was a momentary emptiness in her eyes, a moment of hesitation. Perhaps she too sensed she had crossed a line. Emma paused for a moment. She looked at the studio, the audience, and then at Joy. With a simple but determined expression, she said, Everyone saw clearly who they were today. Who you are, who I am. Then she turned and slowly walked away from the podium. The cameras followed her. Her steps weren't rushed. Each one was measured, deliberate, as if each step completed a sentence she couldn't say. A storm of whispers rose in the studio behind her. Curious glances, murmurs, nervous laughter. Everyone was trying to figure out what had happened. Joy sat there in her chair. Her arms were still crossed, but her lips were pressed into a thin line. She was no longer smiling. Her face seemed caught between joy and regret. As Emma approached the curtain upstage, she stopped. She took a deep breath. She turned one last time. The camera slowly zoomed in on her face. His face remained calm, but his eyes still blazed with fire. And without raising his voice, he spoke those final words that resonated throughout the studio. "I came here today because I wanted to explain what I do, what I believe in, for a real conversation." "I was ready for the tough questions," Emma said, her eyes directed directly at the audience. "And for disagreement." A momentary pause. Her voice was low, but every word was full and clear. "But what I wasn't ready for was a cruelty disguised as journalism." Joy reflexively flinched at the word. Instead of looking away, she turned her head to the side, rolled her eyes. But even then, her discomfort couldn't be concealed. Emma took another step forward. She stood center stage. Her voice now reached not only the studio audience, but also the millions behind the cameras. People come here to this program for honesty, for a real conversation, for a bridge between different voices. But what do they get? A stage where people are humiliated, shamed, and sacrificed for cheap applause. Some in the audience applauded loudly. A few stood. Others simply stared in awe. Because this wasn't a performance, it was a stance. Emma didn't join the applause. She waited for silence. Then she raised her voice again for her final words. "You don't have to like me. You don't even have to respect me. But never think that just because you're sitting in a chair gives you the right to insult someone else. Because this isn't journalism. This is just bullying in a better light." Joy's lips parted. It was as if she wanted to say something, but the words didn't come. Emma nodded slightly, making a gesture of assent to herself. Then she turned and began walking toward the curtain at the side of the stage. Every step was a silent manifesto. She paused for a moment before reaching the curtain. She turned and took one last look at the stage and the cameras. There was no weariness in her eyes, only the weight of being right. Then she parted the curtain and left the stage. This time the audience was on its feet. Applause erupted. Some were shouting, "Emma! Emma!" Backstage, the producers and PR people were stunned. As Emma passed them, she simply said a polite, "Thank you." Her eyes held peace, not anger. On stage, Joy Behar sat silently. Her hands were clasped together. Her gaze was fixed on them. The grin on her face was gone, replaced by a dull expression. She was simply thinking, perhaps for the first time. Whoopi, Sunny, and Sarah exchanged anxious glances. Finally, Whoopi was the first to break the silence. "Yes, we'll be together again after this break." But for millions, both in the studio and on screen, this was a moment to be taken back. Everyone sensed that day would go down in history. Minutes later, social media exploded. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, they were all filled with the same images. Emma Watson shuts down live bullying with grace. Cruelty disguised as journalism, Emma's final words go viral. Emma walks out. Stand with Emma, view meltdown. The clips were viewed millions of times. Everyone was saying something. Some defending Joy, but most were in awe of Emma Watson's dignity, grace, and strength. That night, Emma released a short statement on social media. "We can think differently. It's our right to question. But humiliating, silencing, or belittling anyone should never be normalized. I had to remind you of that today, and I don't regret it." The post received millions of likes, thousands of comments, hundreds of thousands of shares. Joy Behar, however, remained silent. Her silence spoke louder than any defense that day. Emma walkout and if Watson's joy had cruelty, is not journalism, had grace under fire. Within hours, these hashtags took Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok by storm. Everyone was saying something. Every line, every gesture, every look was being analyzed. Some called Joy Behar brave, applauding her for asking the truth. But the majority believed the incidents had already crossed a line. Public opinion was rapidly turning in Emma Watson's favor. Headlines exploded. Emma Watson walks off of The View, leaves with dignity, intact. Joy Behar faces backlash. After bitter interview, spirals out of control. Watson's silence was louder than words. Former guests, actors, and journalists began sharing posts on social media. Many defended Emma's calm, kindness, and dignified stance despite the hostile attitude. That same evening, Emma shared a simple yet profound statement on her personal social media account. Differing opinions are valuable, so are tough questions. But mockery and contempt are never freedom of expression. We all deserve respect, even if we disagree. I needed to remind you of that today, and that's why I'm here. Thank you. The post received 7 million likes in just a few hours. The hashtag #RespectEmma trended worldwide overnight. Joy Behar remained silent. That silence now spoke louder than any defense. And so, it wasn't just an interview, it went down as one of the most dramatic and unforgettable moments in television history. That day, Emma Watson took the stage, persevered, was tested, but in the end, she didn't retreat. She simply walked. And she did it not as if defeated, but as if she had won with honor. So what do you think? Did Emma do the right thing? Did Joy cross the line? Leave your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for the next unforgettable moments. Because this story ends here, but the next clash is waiting just around the corner.